Okay, let's dive into something pretty wild today. We're breaking down a piece of audio, a recording made on January 18th, 2026. In it, a man is claiming he got a tip from a whistleblower about a plot, a multi-pronged plot to get him thrown in prison. And here's the kicker. He's recording all of this before it can supposedly happen, basically as a time-stamped insurance policy. Right out of the gate, he hits us with this really stark claim. He says this all came from a Venezuelan informant, like just the night before, and he's making this recording to get it on the record, to prove that if any of this stuff actually happens, well, it was all part of a pre-planned setup. All right, so to make sense of this whole thing, we're going to break it down into four main parts. We'll start with the warning itself, then get into those three alleged plots, see how he plans to fight back, and finally look at the giant conspiracy he says is behind everything. So let's start at the beginning. Why even make this recording? Well, the speaker is super clear about this. He calls it his timestamp. The whole idea is to get everything on the record before it happens. That way, if it does, he can point to this recording and say, "See, I told you so. It was all a setup." So where is he getting this info? He says it's from an informant, someone with a direct line to this really high-profile Venezuelan figure, a guy named Diosdado Cabello. And apparently this informant is feeding him this stuff on the sly, hoping it'll eventually take Cabello down a peg. Okay, now we're getting to the heart of it. According to the speaker, this isn't just one simple threat. No, he says his opponents have this whole kind of sophisticated three-pronged strategy. Three separate avenues, he calls them, all leading to the same place, him in a jail cell. So these are the three alleged plots the informant supposedly detailed. You've got the ruse, the courtroom trap, and the HOA lawsuit. Let's dive into each one, starting with the one that's, well, pretty personal. All right, first up is what he calls the ruse. And this one sounds like something out of a spy movie. He says he was warned that his former partner would show up to a meeting carrying a bugged, metallic, purple water bottle. The whole point? To secretly record him and twist his words. So here's how the trap was supposedly set. He says at one point they're talking about their ongoing legal battles, and she says she was hurt and in pain, emotionally. But if you just take that audio clip by itself without any context, it sounds a whole lot like something physical, right? And then, get this, he says at a totally different point in the conversation, she just casually mentions she's on her period and bleeding. The whole alleged plan? To splice those two completely unrelated audio clips together to create this horrifying and totally fake story of a violent assault. So you might be asking, what's the real goal here? Well, according to the speaker, it's not just about getting him arrested. The real prize, he claims, is getting a search warrant. That way they could seize all his computers and, destroy all the so-called damning evidence he says he's collected on them. Okay, so avenue number 2 is what he calls the courtroom trap. This one is all about using the legal system itself against him. The prediction is that in a hearing coming up on January 22nd, a specific judge, Oscar Telfair, is going to deny a motion for him to step aside. And then boom, right then and there, find him in contempt of court and sentence him to jail. Now, he knows what people will say. They'll claim he just made up this conflict with the judge to stall for time. But he says, hold on, and points to this timeline as his proof. I mean, look at these dates. He shows he reported the judge to the IRS way back in July of 2025. Then in September, he puts the judge's picture on the cover of his book. So he argues his official DOJ complaint in January wasn't some sudden trick. It was just the next logical step in a conflict that had been brewing for months. And finally, the third path. This one seems almost mundane, which is maybe the point. He claims his homeowners association, his HOA, is using this lawsuit over a $3,000 fine for a no trespassing sign as the legal backdoor to get a judge to hold him in contempt and throw him in jail. Just wild. Okay, so after laying out all the ways they're supposedly trying to get him, the speaker flips the script and talks about his own counterattack. And he says this wasn't just a random strategy. He actually developed it using a method he calls A/B testing, kind of like what software developers do. And this right here really breaks down his thinking. He says he filed a bunch of complaints with the IRS and crickets, barely a reaction. He says they had it under control. But then, the moment he started filing things with the Department of Justice, the DOJ, that's when he says he saw pure panic, a sudden frantic scramble to get him in prison fast. And that, he says, was the light bulb moment. He came to the conclusion that the DOJ is the one agency they can't control. the one pressure point they're terrified of. So now, that's his whole strategy. Gather evidence and send it straight to the DOJ. All right, so for the final piece, the speaker zooms way out. He connects all these immediate threats, the ruse, the courtroom, the HOA, to this massive global conspiracy he claims he's uncovered in his self-published book. So check this out. He says the cover of his book, Project Diosdado, isn't just some random design. He claims it was actually generated by an algorithm that crunched data from a database allegedly leaked from that same Venezuelan figure, Diosdado Cabello. The result is basically a power map. The bigger a person's face and the closer it is to the center, the more important they are in this whole network. And this, he says, is his smoking gun. He points out that all these people, Judge Telfair, another Judge Susan Brown, even the Texas governor, are right there on his book cover, which he published months ago back in September 2025. For him, this is undeniable proof that they've been part of this thing all along. Then things get even more mysterious. In a final twist, he drops this code name. He sends a direct warning to his opponents, saying that their actions are going to force this whole case in front of a powerful, irreplaceable person known only as the chicken wing. He makes it sound like this person is their worst nightmare. So what are we left with? You've got this recording that lays out this incredibly detailed and complex web of accusations, from secret bugs in water bottles to judicial plots and a massive global conspiracy. It's one man's side of a very, very bitter information war. Is this a whistleblower's desperate attempt to get evidence on the record, or is it just a wild conspiratorial tale? The source material? Well, it leaves that for you to decide.